I don't really have a closing in opening graphic, Charles, but
it's all right.
Might as well close in.
Let's go to it.
Yeah, how are you?
Oh, it's great to be back. And again, this art department, I mean, this is really going to be an iconic poster, I think. It's really wonderful.
His head fit there sort of perfectly. Some of them just come easily, you know?
Well, this is for the viewers, in case you have difficulty figuring out who this is. This is former Director of National Intelligence, Admiral James Clapper, who it turns out is singing like a canary.
It's really surprising. I would even say calling him the Director of Intelligence is slightly generous. But
That's right.
we don't really know the intelligence level. I mean, he really does look odd whenever you see him. He doesn't have the air of someone of great, you know.
Who does he look like?
He looks a little bit like the, sorry, wrong, there we go. He looks a bit like the Smeagol from Lord of the Rings. But this one has hair, so I don't know if that really can be.
This is when he was, say, 40 probably.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Hadn't started working out yet.
Yeah, but it is really significant, Charles. You know, it's funny, there's been a lot of tweets and a lot of different reporting about Clapper saying these things, and see, so much of this stuff is so complicated that for the average viewer, it can sort of just be like, well, all right, so what? One guy said it. But that's part of the reason why Sunday with Charles and Charles Ortel is closing in are such important shows, because for people who want to know, it really gives them an opportunity to join us for an extended period of time, however long you need, to go into the great detail so that people can understand the significance of someone at this level under Obama coming out and saying this stuff.
Yeah, this has really been a big, I would say, 48, 72 hours. But before we get into big subjects, we want to talk about a little subject, which is the size of Clapper's hands.
Yeah, well, we wanted to, make it to scale, so we had to make sure. That's the original baby hands from the John Travolta and Bruce Willis movie. But his head did fit in there perfectly. He's making almost the same face that he's always making anytime you ever see him. He just doesn't look like a man who's happy about anything.
Well, I think I've mentioned this before, but I'll remind the audience that once I was in a meeting when I was at the first firm I worked for with a number of important people, and it was our Monday morning meeting where you had to go, if you wanted to still be a managing director at the top level of this firm, every Monday morning at 8 o'clock, you'd go around this big conference room table and you'd have to say something, and the people who were very successful would get up and say, well, I just signed this client up, we're going to make $5 million this week on this project, $10 million on that, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And then the blowhards would sit up there and talk about, the shipping rates and, where the price of oil was going to go and blah, 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 blah. And this guy gets up and says, well, I was just with Nick Brady, the former chairman of the firm and then Secretary of the Treasury, and he asked my opinion on the price of oil and blah, blah, blah. I told him I was going to do this and that. And this very powerful partner in a stage whisper, says to me, Charles, you want to know why Nick talks to this guy and asks him his opinion? Because he's always wrong. And this guy, Clapper, is always wrong. I mean, that's valuable, though.
Yeah, you've taught me that someone who's always wrong is very valuable.
Right, because, somebody who's always right, it's going to be very difficult to even meet that person. But somebody who gets into this position and is always wrong, that's really super, man. I mean, that's great stuff.
Well, it's like that Seinfeld episode where George Costanza just does the opposite of whatever. He gets a job and a model to date.
Yeah, it's very, that was...
Tuna salad is the opposite of...
Right. But on a somber note, maybe we could go into the cover page of the slide. And what we have had happen here in the last 48 to 72 hours is that Clapper has basically, we're going to get into this in some detail, he has called out Barack Obama as saying that Barack Obama is responsible for this mess that we're in, and that the mess does not simply deal with 2015, 2016, and what looks to me, and I think to you and our audience, as being conspiracy involving the Democrats, specifically Barack Obama and the Democratic National Committee, to basically rig the primaries. That I think we know happened in the Democratic primaries, and then seemingly think they could rig the election, which didn't happen, but then they tried to create this resistance, this insurrection, this rebellion to take down President Trump. And I mean, this is a massive thing, and as we'll get into some of the details, Clapper apparently is very mumuch hot on the griddle because he realizes, you know, if he doesn't do this, then Obama's just going to blame everything on Clapper and say, you know, I didn't do this, you know, it was just Clapper went over and did this. So Clapper's got to get out front of the freight train, which he's done.
But it does really seem like, I mean, this is rats running from the sinking ship. So perhaps the swamp is draining.
It is, I think. And I mean, look, we're at a very dangerous moment here. And I think President Trump and the administration and the people around him have played this very carefully. It's been wise for them to take the time to, in Japanese, I think the phrase is called nemawashi, which, and I don't speak Japanese.
You just
did. That's about, I know that, and sushi, sashimi. But nemawashi, it was explained to me, is carefully laying the groundwork in a garden so that you set it up properly, and then these gardens, whether they're rock gardens or other kind of gardens, they work for you. And I think that's what the Trump team has actually been doing here very skillfully. They decided they didn't need this, you know, gigantic bureaucracy that Obama wanted everywhere in the White House and the State Department, so they trimmed that back down. It's taken a while for them to get, they still don't have all the right people in there.
Right.
But they realized, I think, and I think Admiral Rogers will end up being, you know, right up there with George Washington at the end of the day for going into Donald Trump in between, as the resistance was mounting in, I think, Bedminster, and telling Trump, listen, you know, you got to get out of Trump Tower.
Raising the alarm.
And then, you know, helping Trump, I would guess, do what he's been doing so skillfully to, you know, figure out, let the resistance go. He holds the, as it were, Trump cards, the winning cards that trump everything. He's the president.
I was going to say that these statements, it's almost like a thunderclap through Washington, but then I was like, that's his last name. But it is. It really, this is hugely significant. And the first time, I mean, this takes it right to Obama, which is where it needed to go all along. And for some reason, some people out there haven't been saying it. So we're here to say this is the beginning of the end for Barack Obama.
I think it's way past that. I mean, we started on Sunday. We had the Chicago show with Janine Pirro, and thanks to her for joining us, and to Fabien, who I hope is on vacation, certainly not watching the show now, I hope. He's been given his marching orders that he has to go on vacation.
There's nobody not watching when you come on,
Charles. Stop. But the real story here, I think, is one that will now get told, which is that we Americans, we submitted too meekly to the deep state after September 11th, 2001.
Agreed.
You know, whether you think, you know, whatever you think may have been the cause of September 11th, 2001, the aftermath was, you know, we just fell lockstep into this. You know, the government knows best. The government, you may surrender some freedoms, but don't ask any tough questions. The government knows best. And just at this period, really, around September 11, 2001, is just about the time frame that Americans and others around the world began to be connected to using broadband cable, faster internet connections, and so that what you could do with technology really began to, you remember at this point you were basically dial-up at September 11th, 2001, most people were. You're starting to get into broadband.
Oh, yeah, no, you're right, and people forget that quickly, and also people forget not everybody had a camera on them at all times, and so you're right, it does.
And then also, there's, you know, I started using Google, I think in this time frame from memory, but Facebook I don't think was around, maybe it was 98.
No, you know what, I didn't really get onto Facebook until, 2008, 2007.
late? And
I don't think it even was introduced until 2005 or 2006. We'd have to look that up. But no, you're right. There's a ton of stuff that people rely on every day that just wasn't there in 2001.
So going back before the September 11th, 2001, many Americans, I would count myself as one of them, had the viewpoint that government was useful, but not evil. Government and not something we really needed to worry about, and you could still be free, and so long as you respect the law, nobody's going to track you down and look at everything you're doing and triangulate you and whatever.
Right.
Well, right after September 11th, 2001, we submitted to authority. We stopped questioning authority, and authorities suddenly said, well, if the sheeple are going to submit, look at this nifty tool over here, and this tool over there, and this tool over there. And suddenly, we're tracking the movements of every American, and they're coming out with all these the rules that are the Constitution certainly predated the rise of social media, and in fact, the Constitution. This is a side point, but the Constitution explicitly contained a provision outlawing an income tax. So a lot of facets of
the Constitution outlaws,
because they didn't believe in it. They'd seen the use of it in prior English governments. That it didn't
outlawing, yes.
Yes, a specific prohibition against the income tax.
I misheard outlining. So because Field McConnell tells me repeatedly that you shouldn't pay income tax.
Well, no, you have to now. But the point is, the Constitution, the founders said, they thought about it. They said, no, we're not doing it that way. That is not the right way to go. It hasn't worked before. And so a lot of the other parts of the Constitution, just didn't contemplate what would happen if you did have an income tax and how that might affect the branches of government and how the people who collect the taxes need to be regulated and how that might create a perpetual bureaucracy that only wants to get bigger and bigger and better paid and hold itself out against the law.
But Charles, if the Constitution outlaws it, how can it be?
So what happened is, and I'm also not an historian, but I like studying it a bit on the side. But what happened was to finance the War of Northern Aggression or the Civil War, whichever way you want to talk about it, Abraham Lincoln instituted an income tax. Because he basically, some would argue, he put in place martial law, he jailed journalists, he did all kinds of things during wartime. And that decision was thrown out. And so there then began a process when the government needed money. They'd spent a lot of money, they had to be rebuilt. So there ensued a long period where they had to get an actual amendment to the Constitution passed, allowing for an income tax.
But they did?
Oh, they did, yeah. Field McConnell is definitely wrong.
Wow. So Field told me that he does not pay income tax and even had a video for me to watch about how to not do it.
Yeah, that's not a smart move.
Wow. I'll let Field know.
Unless he has no income, in which case he doesn't have to do it. But anyway, so what we're learning is that shortly after September 11th, 2001, we're going to show you a great tweet and spend some time on it that takes through the details. But a new system was created. We know about what Clapper was running. There's supposedly the 17 security agencies of different types. We know some of the names. But it appears there may have been another one, maybe more than one, that Americans ordinarily don't know about. And that this agency may have really gone way over the line spying as early, if I remember the tweet right, as early as 2006, so under Bush.
Yeah.
And so what we could have here, this is what we've been saying all along, that it's not this inquiry into the Clinton Foundation into the largest series of unprosecuted frauds that are still ongoing in the world. This didn't happen because nobody knew about it. This happened because a lot of people in power knew about it and decided, works for them, it'll work for us.
Money's pretty good.
Money's pretty good, no work involved.
Yeah, exactly.
Fly around the world, take credit for everything, and that's works for me. Doesn't work for me actually, but anyway, this signal now that Clapper may be talking and is publicly implicating Barack Obama
on
in ways
CNN, wasn't it?
On CNN itself. And it hasn't been walked back yet. Now this CNN stuff may be a gigantic trolling exercise by CNN and Clapper, to counteract the accusations of fake news. But it does make sense, and as we'll get into in a minute, this tweet kind of this tweet storm, or this tweet thread, takes us through it in some considerable detail. So if we go into the next standard disclaimer page, particularly given the topic today, we do like to remind everybody that we have a First Amendment right here in this country to express our views. We try to provide sources wherever we can so that our views, we're not just we are, I suppose, on a digital soapbox, but we're not just throwing stuff against the wall hoping it'll stick. We've done a lot of work now. This is, I think, our 89th or 90th
89, I
89th?
think, yeah.
But it's important that people around the world who don't have the protection we have in this country of First Amendment grow to appreciate how important it is to have the equivalent of a First Amendment in these other countries. And I would encourage those who are getting active, trying to make their own countries great again, that they think about the virtues of saying in a place like, for example, Sweden, right. Why isn't there a First Amendment? And why are we in a place now where we're afraid to go outside? Horrible tales coming out of Sweden from Biljana, our friend there, and from others, and in other countries. I mean, so First Amendment's a powerful tool.
But we should also shout out to people living in potential shitholes that are trying to make them great for the first time. Not even again.
That's true. Actually, we've done 89 videos. This is our 90th.
Oh, this is the 90th, exactly. There you go.
So,
well, it's always handy, Charles, to have the Sunday with Charles playlist, which of course includes the closing in episodes. I try to keep it updated. So yes, you're right. Today's is the 90th program. I wonder if we should have a 100th anniversary special.
Yeah, we should. We should. I don't know. We can get it done in time for Bill Clinton's birthday, which is in August.
When is Bill Clinton's? August?
Yeah, it's like 3 weeks. It's like August 20th, I think, or something like that.
Huh. I wonder what he'll be getting for his birthday. But all of the episodes are here. Lots of good material with all of our great guests and the marvelous poster spoofs that we've done, and that's a good resource for people who want to keep up on all the information that you're dropping on a bi-weekly basis, or actually twice weekly basis.
Right. Trying to, sometimes 3 times.
Exactly, exactly.
So if we go into the first, or the third page, I guess here, we have, this is hysterical, this is from CNN on the 23rd of July, so we're 2 days ago. All right, Trump is taking U.S. down the path to tyranny. Now that's a path that this asshole, Jeffrey Sachs, knows very well, and he is a flaming asshole. This is a guy who, when our Russian colleagues or Central European colleagues will know exactly what I'm talking about. This is a guy with a bunch of, when he was at Harvard, who said about looting with Mark Rich and others, the former Soviet Union and Central Europe, etc., destroying many industries and portions of countries, causing considerable pain. And he is lionized. He now leads some idiotic institute at Columbia. And you look at his resume up and he's got this award and this professorship and this book and whatever. He is an asshole and an idiot. He really is. It's just amazing to me.
Tell me how you really feel, Charles.
I mean, and honestly, people really need to go back over, and he's another guy, anything he says is right is wrong. So, we just can look at what he says to suggest, he operates from the protection of being a professor, a tenured professor at Columbia, right? He's inside, for the moment, the protected Ivy League, where, the gigantic endowments, many more students around the world than there are places. He's got, he can't be fired. The endowment of Columbia is massive. His economic, he could do stuff on the side and make money, so he's fine. And it used to be that there was some sort of tension between these charities that we've been talking about. After all, Columbia University is supposed to be a charity.
Is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
It's tax exempt, federally and state and city tax exempt. So, this kind of an entity should not be increasing the burden of government by creating the kind of instability this man has created by himself, literally, around the world. The kind of enmity that we have with Russia, in part, is due to this asshole.
Wow. I will tell you, Charles, your fans in Philadelphia are enthusiastically backing your dissatisfaction with this guy.
Good. I mean, he's just seriously. I mean, we ought to send. I don't know if you could do this on Twitter and not get in trouble. We could get a nice, bunch of tweets going from crowdsourcers to this guy, with various samples of. This would be an extra credit one. Who can come up with the video? I mean, the whatever pictures or whatever. Not gross pictures, cartoon pictures of the area in which Chelsea Clinton is an expert.
We got to be careful. We don't want to encourage anyone to harass this man.
Not to harass him, but just
tweeting a question about why he did this or that, and digging into the background of some of the activities that he's done. It's funny, Charles. Recently, a lot has been coming up about what happened when the Soviet Union collapsed, and we're finding that this Bill Browder, and I've brought this up, I've heard it in what I consider to be reputable documentaries about 9/11, particularly Anatomy of a Great Deception, talks about how Cantor Fitzgerald, I believe, was specialized in foreign securities or something like that.
It was a big trading operation, did all kinds of stuff, yeah.
Well, something went on with George Bush and Frank Carlucci and all kinds of stealing of money from the Soviet Union.
I don't know the specifics about that. This was more the kind of stuff that Mark Rich and Browder did. What happened is the Soviet Union fell apart, and that, was a big problem for mainstream American academics in Oxford and Cambridge who were trying to say, there's various ways you can go. They're the evil, profit-seeking capitalists. And then there's the Soviet Union, another approach. Long-term planning, common ownership of assets.
Who said that?
There were many people at Columbia and Yale and Harvard and Princeton. They loved this idea of Marx actually was much smarter. We need to let these pointy-headed eggheads get together and write their books and have their adoring students in class pay them tons of money and borrow, and then they live lifestyles of, multimillionaires. Exactly. Spotting this garbage. Yeah. And so it became a real problem for them when the Soviet Union blew up. Because now you got to say, well, wait a minute, if I just spent the last, 3 decades of my life saying this is a great idea,
but it failed.
Big fail. So anyway, he and his team of Harvard people, he was then at Harvard, flew, got on mass planes over there and, in quote, helped, the Soviet Union in transition, but they didn't do a very good job of helping. They got in bed with people like Mark Rich and others who would pay off, the former Soviet Union types who had control over the factories in the Soviet system as it blew up, and they would figure out a way to rig the bidding, the so-called privatizations, to buy the assets at fire sale prices, which were unjustifiably low, sit on those assets for a while and flip them for the real price. That is not, that's the kind of stuff the Clintons like to do. You go in, you say that this country has HIV/AIDS problem, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. You get these gullible governments to give you a ton of money. You then say the money is going to save the HIV/AIDS people, but you don't bother to set up a charity. You don't bother to check anything, and you just steal as much money or you load it as much money as possible, get diverted for whatever. Now this kind of stuff is not something that should go unpunished, and particularly if it's being done in the brand name of an august university like Harvard or Columbia, whatever. You should have. The academics are fond of saying, "You evil bankers." You need to be regulated. You
we
traders.
Need to do the evil.
You're getting into our business here. Why shouldn't a university be subjected every 5 years, 10 years to the kind of a rigorous external audit that says, okay, you're supposed to be exclusively engaged in charitable purposes. You're not supposed to be organized for private benefit. Now, how many of you professors make more than $500,000 a year? And how many of you derive more than, pick a number of, they do make a lot of money.
Is any university, is NYU a charity?
Absolutely.
There's no way.
It is a charity.
No way.
It's
got to be a fraud. I personally have witnessed tons of...
No, it's absolutely a charity. It's organized as a charity. And so this, we need to take a step back. And, instead of, there's this whole, when I say that we meekly submitted to the deep state, we have meekly submitted to this idea that it makes economic sense for every student who might have an interest in going to college, whether they really should go to college or not. Because some people you hear that if you go to college, you'll have a better life. But if you're frankly a bad student, and there are many people who are just, they don't like to study. You know, you don't want to go. There's certain schools that you don't go to Caltech if you're a bad student and you don't like science. That's a very bad move.
Yeah.
Right?
And you just never survive.
Yeah, and whereas not everybody should be a professor. I mean, some people are good teachers. There's that movie Bad Teachers. I mean, there are, you know, many, you've had bad teachers, I've had bad teachers. I mean, you know, so there should be a process wherein this new IRS guy and the Justice Department goes back into the question of, all right, let's look at Columbia, to pick on this jerk face. You know, Columbia is a school that has gullible undergraduates, and then it has, you know, these professional schools, the School of Health. Who went to that School of Health? The diarrhea expert, right there. Chelsea, right? She got a master's, I think, from there. I may have that wrong. But it has a law school. It has a business school. It has a number of these professional schools that mint money because they have tiny numbers of students relative to people who are applying. There is a possibility when you get, my ex-wife got an MBA at Columbia, many people I know went there. You know, and you pay the freight. Those kind of the business school, you know, you actually don't need to be a super smart person to do well in business school, but you do need to be super smart through the law school, through the medical school, maybe the health management school, not so much. You know, you dissect the financial statements of a Columbia, of a Harvard, of a Yale, of these other schools, and ask yourself, you know, is this something that's being organized to truly educate people? Or on the other hand, is this now become something, does it say she? Yeah, Columbia University.
But it says something strange. It says that she earned a master's degree from the University College, Oxford, and Columbia.
Yeah, it's possible.
So is that 2 master's degrees, or?
I guess.
Diarrhea is a complicated topic.
That's right, it's transatlantic at a minimum.
Charles, I've got a question for you that's possibly 88 episodes overdue. It seems to me that maybe like virtually all 501c3s are frauds.
Well, no. I know of many that are not. No.
But just so many are.
Well, you know, it's kind of the thing. If you think about it, when we think about fraud, and you got to strip away your preconceptions about fraudsters. You hear the word fraud, you say, oh, bad, criminal, stupid. Who would be a fraudster? Right. Now, it is criminal, and it is bad, but these people are not stupid. They're very smart people.
They found the hole and went through it. 501c3 has a weakness.
And they look back and they say, you know, if I'm a fraudster, you know, you don't walk into a hotel and say, I like the presidential suite. What do you do, sir? Well, I'm the king of all fraudsters. Say, yeah. Really? I don't think we'll let you in. Claridge is in the, whatever it is, the Queen's suite in London. But, you know, you go in and you say, well, what is your profession? Well, I really don't like to talk about it, but I've devoted my life to philanthropy. Oh, get that Clinton guy out of the presidential suite, get Queen Elizabeth out of there. We're giving you the best. Yeah, you're a philanthropist.
This is a somewhat autobiographical joke, isn't it?
Well, you know, so I mean, it's just, it is an area that demands attention. You know, we see in that.
Sorry, nobody saw that.
We see in the case of the New York Attorney General's lawsuit against the Trump Foundation, the essence of allegations, you know, that are not proven yet, that you do explain why, you know, you operate a charity outside the law, you deserve to be punished if that actually happened.
I agree.
And if you do it on the scale that we've been talking about here, which is monumental, you know, you can't let it go unpunished because the world knows at this point it is a monumental fraud. I mean, the way in which Janine riffed on it, both on our show and then later, and the way, I mean, everybody knows. I won't say who it is, I'm gonna let you off the hook. Not you, Jason, but the person in question. You know, a very senior person who is an Obama probe, I mean, like one of the really powerful people behind Obama, you know, said to me, look, everybody knows it's a fraud at this point. So, okay, you got it. We're not just going to move on.org here. You know,
is this guy circling jobs in the classified ads at Starbucks?
No. This is somebody who no longer needs to work. But anyway, so we have Mr. Sachs, Professor Sachs, spouting gibberish via the medium of choice, CNN. When there are what, like 6 people watching that now? CNN, or is it up to 8?
I don't know.
But we have this story here after the news. The biggest news in the recent period has been this Carter Page thing. And here's one of the best columnists at Lifezette, full-time columnists, saying, it's really time for Trump to declassify as much of this FISA warrant as possible. What they released to the public was so much filled with blacked out magic marker stuff. We need to not only see as much of the real thing as possible, Mr. President, but in addition to that, we need people with expertise in FISA warrants to say, okay, here's what they gave us first, now here's what they give us second. Now let's analyze the significance of each change and how many ridiculous redactions were there in this first lame-brained attempt, and who was responsible for those redactions. And I'm going to bet you a man named Rod Rosenstein, I promise I won't bring up his name, was very much involved, one way or another, saying, all right, they got us, we'll just see if we can get away with this, And that's just, I'm tired of this. We don't have this, we shouldn't have a street that says, the citizens are forced to go at 3 miles an hour, but the government can go at 7,000 miles an hour. We've got to have, if the government comes to you and says, make truthful disclosure in a deposition, you have to make truthful disclosure. When the government gets caught, as they have in this case, it's a bipartisan effort here. It's a government which under Obama allowed this thing to go through, and it's a government which under President Trump has allowed the process of finding out what truly happened to be obstructed. So it's not just a riff here on Democrats. The swamp is at fault here, and the swamp needs to be brought out front and center here to explain exactly what in the hell was going on here. So if we go back into the...
Before we do that, I just wanted to talk about the redaction process. We don't really know what, they can just cross out whatever they want. And Kevin Shipp has made a point of saying that it's specifically illegal for the intelligence agencies to redact things that aren't classified. They just take them out because they're embarrassing.
Right.
That's a crime. And they've done that to stuff that he's released.
I'm sure that's true, and it's got to stop. I mean, it's really got to stop. It's not like, it's not like we've got together and, we're taking, I don't know, $100 million and giving it to a band of merry public servants who, for $40,000 each and no other potential career benefits are going out and serving this country. And people at the top of this have been, there are many of them who, yes, they work in public service, but then they leave with their security clearance intact, which makes them very marketable at all the Beltway bandits, and then they go and some of them create new private army companies, new security, and they may become multimillionaires. And to be fair, it's Republicans and Democrats who do this. And the business of trafficking, working briefly in government to enhance your marketability in the private sector is something that's just, that ain't right.
It's got to be made illegal.
Well, it's got to be changed. There's got to be more of a balance. I mean, the very same people who are saying, Pocahontas Elizabeth Warren supposedly is saying she wants everyone else most likely to pay 50% income taxes when she flips the Senate. I mean, the only Senate she's going to be flipping is one that's going to be going around in a washing machine. She has a shirt that says Senate on it, throws it in the washing machine. I mean, but anyway, Trump needs to declassify this stuff. And, this story in here, this conservative treehouse one, what I believe, now we see the double standard. This idiot, this James Wolfe, and I suspect he's not related to that author, Fire and Fury Wolf, but this idiot, criminal, traitor, who was a top staffer in the Senate Intelligence Committee, and I've seen a lot of negative chatter in the mainstream and other press about the Senate Intelligence Committee, and a lot of negative stuff, saying you can't trust it, very leaky. This is in part, look at that face. That's a face a mother wouldn't even love.
Apparently this reporter loves him.
Well, I'm not talking about her, I'm talking about James Wolfe.
Right,
yeah,
but she loves him. They had a romantic
past,
relationship,
past
didn't they?
tense, past tense, I believe. But anyway, this bonehead criminal goes and gives the full FISA warrant application to the reporter. So it's okay for him to give the full thing away to the girl he's sleeping with, but we, the people who paid for it, paid for all this stuff, we get a piece of garbage out of the government that you can't really decipher. But there's enough of it in there, and we know that some in Congress are characterizing it as it should never have been issued. It should never have been issued the first time.
Charles, this story is an interesting and odd one, and I don't know, people might hate what I'm about to say, but of course, if a man who worked at the New York Times used some sort of psychological influence over Allie Watkins in the workplace that was at all sexually motivated, that would probably be a Me Too kind of sexual harassment thing. But when the shoe is on the other foot and a woman can use her sexual capabilities to coerce information, I'm not saying this guy's the victim, but there's something very wrong with the way this woman is acting as a reporter.
Yeah, and it's not as, remember, this guy's a staffer, right? This guy is not a senator. If it were a senator, in some ways it'd be a lot worse, but he's a staffer. He's a career
He's
staffer.
all about the staff.
He's been at this a long time. And, I think this speaks volumes about, is it a wise thing to have career staffers spend this much time on a sensitive committee like the Senate Intelligence Committee?
Too much power.
And gain way, the senators are out there grandstanding while this idiot, is leaking FISA warrants that, could have tipped the balance in the resistance, could have tipped it, at different stages here.
Well, it's obviously what they're trying to do.
Well, it's got to stop. And it's not like this guy is working on, I don't know, pick a harmless committee, the Committee on Regulating the Size of Bubblegum or whatever they do. It's not like he's working on that. This is the Senate Intelligence Committee that oversees, the 17 known security services and maybe others we don't know about.
Wow.
This is something, this to me, that Brennan, we'll get to him in a minute, but, for Brennan to say that, he has any sort of opinion that anybody should care about, and call the president a traitor. The real traitors we know about are this guy, Wolf, and many others that we don't yet know about.
Well, isn't he on trial, Wolf?
Yeah, damn right, he's been indicted.
He's been indicted, so he'll probably go to jail for that.
Well, is that enough? We don't yet know what the guy actually did. This is the only thing we know about so far is the FISA warrant. We don't know everything else he may have done. So here's this story about Gollum, Clapper or whatever his name. Yeah, this came out 2 days ago, and we talked about it on Sunday with Charles briefly because it was rumored, and I don't think this is getting enough attention. For James Clapper, you don't go out and start making this type of accusation against the former president of the United States, unless you're ready to make peace, with your maker here. Because I'm not saying he will be killed for this, but it is the game on, game on. You can be very sure that the Trump team and the people who control the Department of Justice now, the people who control they have noticed this.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if we go into the next slide. Not next slide, the next line of the slide. This guy, I don't know if it's a guy or a woman, but Imperator Rex.
This is an epic tweet.
Yeah, I like, if it's okay to if you'll indulge me, Jason, on this, I'll try to go through it quickly. Look what he says. Clapper throwing Obama under the bus is an extremely important development.
Oh, I didn't realize I'm not following this person.
Got to follow. He's referring to a lot more than just this recent 2015, 2000. He's going all the way back. So we go to the one underneath it. I think there's 17. We'll go quickly through it. Without a doubt, the most shocking abuse of power in U.S. history.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, apparently, they didn't need to do this. They didn't need to get this warrant sworn out because Obama has the ability, the President of the United States, under legislation we're going to explain to you, if this is right, has the power to do this without a warrant. So why did he go down the track of getting everybody to focus on this 2015, 2016 thing? It's probably to distract from the fact they've been doing far worse for far longer.
Yeah.
So you can go to 5, I think. Yeah, the executive is given power to order warrantless surveillance with no judicial or congressional oversight. So how many people was President Obama, and for that matter Bush, how many people in theory outside the United States under the Obama administration were people under the FISA Act? How many Americans were being spied on? How many persons outside the United States under this act? That's something we do need to know, because if you remember that guy, whatever his name is, Gollum, when he testified before Congress, not wittingly, that stuff, I mean, he said, oh, it's metadata, don't worry about that, it's not that much of it, all that stuff out there in Nevada, don't worry about that big building out there, there's nothing to see here.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
Well, Bill Binney actually said metadata is sometimes more important than the content of the calls, because it tells them who the person is communicating with and when and where the communications are coming from.
Well, what I've been told that what it does, in addition, metadata can tell... What?
It looks like the video might have cut. No, sorry, it's back.
Just the computer?
I guess, I don't know.
But anyway, I've been told that metadata lets you know where you were before you got to the site, where you go after you look at the site, so you can establish a pattern.
That's exactly what I think Bill Binney was saying, is that they can learn so much from the metadata, they just don't even need the contents of the communications.
So they can, Jason has a habit of, at this time of the day, if he's on this site, he's going to go here next. If he's, whatever.
Or even just that I contacted you from this location and then from this location, and then they can know where I was and extrapolate all kinds of things.
Right. So if we go into 6, and this is a site, we're just going to quickly flip you through it. It's a long stream here. There's some program here called Stellar Wind, a warrantless spying project started by W.
Well, Binney spoke about that as well.
Right.
That's why he left the NSA, because it turned these spying tools inward towards the United States.
Unacceptable.
Citizens.
Unacceptable. Then we see Obama in 7 expanded the power of this thing, the power of the executive to spy in 2012. And think about the timing of this. Obama is facing a challenge in 2012. I think we need to go back over now all the way to 2001, maybe beforehand, and citizens need to rise up and demand of the people running for office, particularly in the legislative branch, who are supposed to oversee the executive branch, people who are going to speak up about judges to make sure their adherence to the Constitution as written. We've got to get a real Supreme Court back. We've got to make the judiciary great again. But this type of change that he made, I don't know if he made it before or after the election in 2012, my strong suspicion, since I see this new thread and other things coming up so furiously, is that the election of 2012 could well have been tampered with. Very well.
So much was being tampered with.
Right, so here Stellar Wind went out of control by 2012 and afterwards, especially considering all of you out there, my own father, still very much with us. He knows software and technology extremely well. He is very cautious. He does not like Facebook. He does not like Google. He does not like. He's very suspicious of what people do with all this information that they have, because there now is this mass pool of data. Gigantic pools of data are out there. And the executives can sit in the boardroom and they can say, oh yes, we have policies and procedures, and you get 5 law firms to tell you, oh yes, your board of directors, you're so cautious, aren't you wonderful? Meanwhile, around the world, there are multiple hackers trying to get all this stuff, and there could be governments and non-state-sponsored hackers out there trying to mine this gold that we're all giving away into these swamps, digital swamps, for no compensation.
Yeah.
So that Mark Zuckerberg can have a gigantic compound, multiple compounds in California and Hawaii, and then lecture us about growing inequality. I've got a very nice solution for Mark Zuckerberg. Why don't you go back to that period before you were at Harvard, right? And we'll put you right back in that place by taking all of the wealth that you have created, running these unregulated digital swamps, and using it to pay down the debt that Barack Obama and our legislatures piled upon the backs of the American people between 2009 to the present, and also, unfortunately, the present government.
Do you know what I found out from Bill Binney about this PRISM thing, Charles? It's actually literally, if I understood what he was saying correctly, it's literally a prism that is connected to fiber optic lines so that the data splits and everything going over the line goes out to wherever it's going, but also to a collection.
And who knows wherever else. And so then, this is the 8th one here. There's something called, a division called the Special Source Operations.
Right.
And look at this. The SSO capability allowed it to collect data the equivalent of one Library of Congress every 14.4 seconds.
That's crazy.
That's a lot of data. You know,
well,
and
that was also in 2014 or what?
Six.
Or 2006, right?
Yeah, and you know, here when Snowden originally did what he did, I was very much against him. Mm-hmm. But now I think that I'm not saying he's a hero, but I think the American people, and this is, you know, thinking back to 2006 when cell phones were less powerful, computers were less powerful, if they were doing that then,
right?
You know, and why do these stumblebums in government, you know, who you know can't do anything right, why do they need to have, deserve to have all of this information? What are they doing with it? And you know, shouldn't we be paid at some point? Are the services we get back from Google and Twitter and Facebook, you know, are they worth the value of the data and other information that we feed in for free to these systems? And I would argue, you know, we got Pocahontas caring about the Consumer Protection Bureau and all that kind of stuff. She failed us as head of the first head of the Consumer Protection Bureau.
I mean, that's not. She cares about that.
Of course not. I'm just trying. I don't like her, in case you hadn't noticed.
You think?
But you know, Snowden warned about this back in 2014. We go to 11.
I think Snowden is a hero. I think he had the right idea, and he risked his life. He now lives in exile.
Now, let's look at this. This Maxine Waters says the damnedest things, right?
I actually looked up dope on Wikipedia. There was a picture of her.
Is that right? Yeah, I think they're trying to also make it go to Trump as well. But here it says there's
I made that up.
Oh, okay. There's an interview, February 11, 2013. She describes a secret database that Obama had built that's very, very powerful. Now, excuse me? You know, we had this is from a team that said, you know, they're going to fundamentally transform America. So, you know, you can trust us. You want your doctor, you can keep your doctor. So then we're going to create this healthcare system which puts you under the control of the government, leads to death panels. We're going to take away your guns. We're going to create a gigantic database, but you can trust us. You know, no, we can't. And, you know, we need to understand what the hell was going on here. Who has custody and control of this database? You know, might it by chance be part of a new 501c3 or C4 directed by?
Oh,
right.
The $500 million library in Chicago.
Right, exactly. And so this thing apparently, this database, talking about organizing for America.
Wait a minute. Was that originally Obama for America?
I think so.
Oh, we know somebody who works for that, who's been one of my most persistent
thorns.
Yes.
Yeah. So a 501c4, I'm not as much familiar with a 501c4 as 501c3, but you cannot mix the activities of a 501c3 with the activities of a 501c4 without losing your tax exemption for both.
501c4 specifically has to do with political stuff?
You could, yeah, but your contributions to a 501c4 are not tax deductible, but you don't have to pay taxes on the difference between your revenues and your expenses. You just operate this thing and you can take all the money in and spend it on your expenses and build up a war chest if you want to do that.
Before we get off of Maxine Waters, can I just quickly ask you your opinion of the quality of the idea of telling people about a secret on the news?
I know, I mean, this is
like
somebody,
a secret
yeah,
anymore.
I mean, they're not enough. What did she say recently? Something like that there's, the Democratic Party doesn't have enough people who are left of the left or something like that. I mean, this is somebody who I honestly think needs to step down. I mean,
Yeah.
just like when you get to a certain age, you have to go to the Department of Motor Vehicles Bureau and you
Check
make sure that
again.
this person,
Got to check her again.
you should not drink and bake. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. So if we go to 13, you know, under the Barack Obama period, you know, how many of people have we heard of who were spied upon?
Yeah.
Right? We've heard about Cheryl Atkinson. We've heard about James Rosen. We suspect that possibly the Supreme Court may have been spied upon, the Senate may have been, the House may have been spied upon.
Trump.
Who knows, maybe I've been spied upon.
Larry Klayman.
Larry Klayman, Trump. I mean, this is just not, these are not our values.
Right.
You know, as somebody has said very famously.
They go low.
We get high.
We get high and then we go low.
Right. So, you know, I think this is something that is far worse than Watergate. And here's the Imperial Rex saying, spying many people, Sarah Carter, other people.
Yeah.
You know, we need to know how many different people were spied upon. And I, as a guess, the way they would do it is they would never be so stupid. Maybe they are this stupid to say, well, let's create an enemies list, but we wouldn't want anyone to see something called an enemies list, so we'll call it a friends list. Put it over here, all these names on it, but there's going to be records. Yeah.
Thumbs up, the friends list.
It's not an enemies list.
You know, you just caused me to think of, Charles. You know, it takes me back to the things like the tools revealed in WikiLeaks Vault 7 release, where they have these tools for spying, and it's a big organization, Organizing for America, Obama for America, whatever it was called. This person that I'm thinking of at one time publicly displayed a private text message that I had sent through Skype, and I wonder if being a part of that organization doesn't give you access to these tools that allow you. Cheryl Atkinson specifically told me not to use Skype because it's insecure. And this person I'm thinking of had my private Skype message. How did he get it?
Right. It's just not, it creates these people who, like Peter Strzok and others, who believe that they're above the law.
Can do anything.
You know, and so obviously they had it in for Donald Trump. And this special, whatever it is, operations team are paying Google, Facebook for their data.
Wow.
Okay? So he's talking about what I think Clapper's laid this guy thinks, and I agree with him, Clapper is fingering Obama or accusing Obama because
That's what used to happen in Chicago, I read.
Yeah, because, you know, he was very much at the top of the food chain, and he's one step ahead of Obama here, laying this marker down that he's telling Obama that, you know, when I go down, you go down, buddy.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, this is a big, big development. And frankly, all Americans, this could be a surprising thing that when people think about it, people who, you know, voted for Barack Obama just because he was of African American descent, and it was time to break that boundary and move into the 21st century together, you know, we've been duped. People have been duped here. This is an evil, if this is true, you know, then
it's a subversion of the entire U.S. government.
It's fundamentally transforming America. It's destroying it.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, this person, Barack Obama, who's out there now raising hundreds of millions of dollars in theory for his temple, that's actually for religious purposes, the way it's written, and other purposes. That's got to stop. I mean, it's not a charity. It's not remotely. We're going to do a special presentation on this, but it's, you know, we gave them plenty of time. I spoke to top people there. I told them the problems. They've done nothing about it. Now they're going out creating this other thing illegally. No, you're not getting away with it. Not getting away with it. So this is it's probably enough on this lengthy thread because it goes on and on and on. But I would encourage the viewership, if you have time, not only to read it, but to consider it, and then to circulate it as much as possible. Excuse me. So if we go into the back into the text there. This story from our friend Richard Pollack came out this morning, and in the Daily Caller, and I mean, this is amazing. I mean, this is I don't know if we can get it up on the screen.
Yeah, sorry.
So
Give you some message.
This is Richard Pollack is an Emmy-winning, wonderful person who likes fundamentally being an investigative reporter. He was, I believe, the Washington D.C. producer for Good Morning America. He then became the Washington D.C. producer for Fox on, Fox News Sunday, and he won at least one, maybe more Emmys. And then he decided, you know what, that's great and fun, TV's fun, but I much prefer actually being, a hard-nosed investigative reporter. So he put story after story out there. And here are two retired colonels saying that they went in, on the record by name, they worked for this organization, OPSEC, whatever that was, and they went into Secretary of State John Kerry in 2015 to get the security clearances of Hillary Clinton and her aides, Mills, Abedin, and Sullivan, yanked in 2015. Now, how many times have we reminded people that Hillary Clinton repetitively went out there and said, this is not an investigation, it's not even a matter, it's part of a...
It's not a matter.
Yeah,
it's an anti-matter.
That's it, that's right, yeah, it's I don't know, it's merely part of a normal review of security procedures.
Nah.
Baloney. John Kerry himself, he gets off the phone with one of his butlers, and these people come in and they say, we got to really do something here. We got to yank these security clearances. It's going to become very important to learn when they went ahead and did this, when this actually happened.
Is this the first that we're hearing about that?
Absolutely, this morning.
Wow.
So we're going to get in now to I know Richard, I saw this story, I immediately took him through some of what I will now take the audience through so that he gets a sense of the context. In 2015, remember, this is before there are any primaries. You could have had your man, Bernie Sanders, was still alive. I mean, the 100,000 that you gave him, I mean...
Well, no, I only sent $25.
August 5th, 2015, okay? August 5th. They asked Kerry to suspend the security clearance. The FBI investigation into Hillary Clinton began on July 10th, 2015. 3 weeks later,
yeah,
they're saying, the not-so-merry John Kerry, you got to do something about this party. It's over here. I mean,
wow.
And
how
then
could they allow her to run?
Well, and what happened right after August 5th? They get together with the Democrat National Committee and they use Perkins Coie to rig the primaries. So these people were all in, by August 2015. They were all in. I'm with, what was her,
Jill Stein?
No, what was her campaign thing? I'm with her. Yeah. Her 220, Trump's 2020 anti-Hillary Clinton thing is going to be that song. We can't put it up. It's the Beyonce song. I'm the best thing you've never had. And we'll have Hillary Clinton's picture on it.
Aren't they going to have Hillary Clinton run again in 2020?
It's tough to do that from jail,
yeah,
which is, I think, where she's headed.
Yeah. We should go interview her from jail.
Yeah, but so this is very significant. August 5th, 2015, these people are on the record. We had it confirmed in this article, and there's an August 15 letter saying, when you recklessly compromise top secret sensitive compartmented information, you compromise the security of the United States. Now, was this a material fact? If you're in the Democratic Party, here's Debbie Wasserwoman Schultz is quite prepared to rig the primaries because she probably felt she'd get more out of a Hillary than she would out of a Bernie, okay? This explains a lot. I mean, there had to be a really serious motive for Barack Obama, who in theory is a smart person, and Valerie Jarrett, in theory a smart person, to think that this was a good move, right? You have lots of evidence of people online saying, what happened while what actually happened while Hillary was Secretary of State, not so good, and now FBI investigation, not so good, maybe we ought to have a plan B, an insurance policy. Maybe we ought to let Bernie Sanders be the nominee or somebody who could have beaten Trump. And instead, they lock in for Hillary. So it gives you, I think, I'm not an FBI agent or an investigator, but I see a motive here. I see a burning, a raging inferno. They knew, the Democratic Party and Obama people knew by July 10th, 2015, by July 6th, when the IG, Inspector General for the intelligence community that supposedly sits on top of Clapper,
Right.
and it's, the whole apparatus. They had studied this and said, "Holy shit, holy real shit, what the hell?" And then these people go in, these patriots go in, they go into Kerry and say, "Listen, you got to yank the security clearances down." And of course, the response is, "If I do that, probably the Republicans might run the odd ad between August 5th, 2015 and Election Day in 2016, focusing on that Hillary's service was so great, and all these unanswered questions at Benghazi, it was so great that the Democratic Obama administration decided to yank her security clearances and those of people who would likely figure in a President Clinton administration in very high office." I mean, Uba Abedin was going to be the most powerful person in that administration other than Madame Chardonnay. Madame Chardonnay would probably go off on her Chardonnay and caviar lifestyle doing what she likes to do, which evidently is not picking out classic clothes. And you can attack what I wear, but we might want to just segue into a moment of levity. This has come to us, I think, multiple different ways. I mean, I'm not like you, Jason, I'm not colorblind, but I'm not good putting colors together. So I just stick with my standbys. Dark pants, blue jacket, different tie, whatever. That's what I do. But, I don't need somebody to tell me, don't wear a shower curtain to an event like this.
Well, to be fair, I think it's a picnic table cloth.
Whatever. I mean, it's just nuts. Anyway.
How could they allow, they're saying, well, we don't want to do this because it'll affect the election. But, these are huge crimes. It's amazing we haven't heard about this before now.
Well, when you said, you're convinced that all charities are frauds. We should be pretty well convinced by now that partisan politics is a big fraud, right? Both parties come and say, give money to this party and your life will be better off. Well, aren't I already doing that? Most people, the largest expenditure they make every year is taxes, direct and indirect. You think about the taxes you pay, income taxes and your property tax, your sales tax, and then everything that you buy, there's taxes in that at multiple levels.
Sales tax, right.
So if we go back into that slide carousel, Richard's story is, it has only at this point 4,000 Facebook shares. I think every crowdsourcer should read it and share that story and encourage your followers to share that story. It's a vital story. But we know, and if we go into this thing here, I talk about the FBI investigation. It was clearly not a matter. It was an uppercase investigation. This is the first part. We're now up to 23 different parts of the Hillary R. Clinton dump, and I use that word advisedly. This is a very important one because it's a succinct summary that came out in July 2016, right? And now let's think about this for a second. July 10th, 2015, they say, we've got to open up this investigation with the FBI, right? What are we going to call it? Should we call it, shredding the Constitution? Should we call it, exposing vital national security secrets to all of our enemies? No, let's call it mid-year exam.
For fun and profit.
Yeah, it's like somebody, I forget the particular person who got caught doing this in the merger business. What you would always do is have a project name, because most mergers back when I was doing them in the 80s, they took a long period of acquisitions and defenses. They took a long time to happen. So there would be a lot of planning in advance, and you'd have you didn't have it like we have it now where people would do their own typing. Other people would type the stuff up, and and there were cases where people working in a print shop or a secretary or whatever would actually trade on inside information. So you would come up with a code name for all your projects, and some idiot came up for some very bad project that failed spectacular. It was Project LHTW. Let's hope this works. Which in the subsequent lawsuit didn't work out too well for the bank.
The coded names for things are really often
I forget them all.
Well, remember in Enron, there was some investor who was like the top investor, and they were searching for this guy, M. Yass, until they figured out it was my ass.
But
That's true.
Yes, yeah. So here we have, they select this name, mid-year exam. Now let's think about why they would have been calling it mid-year exam. When was this decision to exonerate Hillary Clinton made?
July, middle of the year.
In the middle of the year. So did they decide that they would go through the motions on July 10th, 2015 of an FBI investigation, let the FBI spin its wheels, and instruct everybody, look, you have to end this by July before the convention.
Because it's all a show anyway.
That's another show. We got this thing rigged. We got this, but you got to get this done. And so now all these bullshit answers we get out of the people who testify before Congress,
Peter Strzok.
Strzok and Clapper and you name it, and Comey, whoever wrote this memo, as a guess, there's more behind it. The way a lot of things work in real life, you get the finished memo, but then there's exhibits behind it and stuff. Somebody knows the unredacted version of this memo. We need to see the whole thing. At the very end of it, you'll see, just for a second here, there is a code. You see this B6, B7C, all that kind of stuff?
Yes.
There's a code where they explain, we won't go through it now.
I think Robin told us something about that.
There's B6 means it's removed for this reason, B7C for another reason. But the question is, do these redactions really need to remain in place? Okay? And anyway, at the very end of this, there's tons and tons, but then the final 15 pages, it's all blank, because those are all the footnotes with all the supporting information. And, see?
Oh, yeah.
It's all blank. So the footnotes are very important. We need to see these footnotes, right? Our viewers first learned about this last year.
Yeah.
Right, we went into this in some
This
depth.
is one of the first things you and I spoke about, I think, before we even started Sunday with Charles.
Right, I think that is true, early on. So back into the old, yeah. And so, see, I want to make sure we get, then an outgrowth, let's see, this one. All right, this is the whole, all 23 dumps, okay? So this is thousands of pages of information. We're going to take you through individual portions of this, again, just very important pieces of it. But government investigators, people with money behind them and analytical power who want to understand what really was going on here, there is a wealth of information already disclosed, and then there's even more information. You could figure out how many pages are missing. We went through that because there's a sequential listing of pages, and if you jump in the middle of a dump that goes, let's say, 200 pages, but that sequential number goes 1,000 pages, there are 800 pages missing.
Right.
So there's a lot here. There are thousands of pages here, many thousands missing. Thank you to the FBI Vault for whoever's doing this. Thanks for getting it out there. We have a thirst for information. It'd be really nice to get this reorganized so that it's all in chronological order instead of having it jump as each of these things do all over the place. To have a new version done where it's just document in order so that we understand what's really going on here. And it would be nice to get some of these redactions unredacted. And to that, Mr. President and your staff, if any of you are watching this, I mean, this is how we get to the bottom. This is how we drain the swamp, because this is a tale. We now will understand why Billy Boy Clinton slithered out of his private plane on the tarmac in Phoenix to meet with Loretta Lynch, and it wasn't to discuss grandchildren. That I can be very sure. Well, it had nothing to do with that.
If there was any discussion about grandchildren, it was whether or not Loretta Lynch ever wanted to see hers again.
Exactly, exactly. So if we go back in there, let's see. This thing we've showed people before, but this is page 122 we need to go to on this, and the fastest way is to go into the PDF.
Right.
And this is a letter that was sent, and I think it was sent by special courier to James Comey on January 10th, 2016. January 10th, 2016, and as Trump likes to do, I'll repeat it one more time. January 10th, let's see, yeah, page 122 you want. Yep, that one. Yep. January 10th, 2016, okay? Now you, I think, Jason, this shows that it's unclassified on the February 12th, 2018. Okay, so why did it take until it was released, much later than that, for it to go on the FBI vault? But this thing, in so many words, says, I'm a senior muckety-muck at the State Department. I am sending you this letter, Mr. Comey. You're in charge of the FBI, because I am aware. Stop. This letter should provide evidence of criminal actions by Hillary Clinton, misspelled, and her personal and official staff, including some who are also acting while under the pay of other persons in organizations such as the Clinton Foundation and its partners. Okay, this went in January 10th, 2016. Now, we subsequently know from the I.G. Horowitz report, an FBI investigation in theory was opened in January 2016 into the Clinton Foundation. So my question is, were the wheels of the mid-year exam investigation spinning faster than this investigation into the Clinton Foundation, which began in January 2016, or at the same slow rate? They get one diseased squirrel, Rocky squirrel over here, and Bullwinkle and the other thing, just go through the motion. And then I can say we were investigating and no one will ever know, you'll be president, and then I'll have all this over your head.
Well, we've heard a million times how, Strzok and McCabe and Comey blocked investigations from happening.
But so this person who is a patriot, we don't really know for certain who it is.
Didn't Katica have
Katica thought it was somebody named Francisco, last name, not San Francisco, but Francisco, who went in and said, look, the thrust of this person's argument, the letter is long and still redacted, seems to me to be, we in the State Department, we swear out oaths, people in the federal government swear out oaths, including the president, owing our fidelity to the Constitution as written.
Right.
Okay?
Not to Barack Obama.
We are not beholden to whatever Barack, and the argument that Barack Obama is the law, this famous quote from Charles Dickens, the law is a ass, that's, I forget which book it was, but Charles, name will come to me. David Copperfield, I think it might have been. But the idea that the president, Nixon mused with that because the president is the highest person, he can do nothing illegal, not so much. The test is you swear an oath of fidelity to the Constitution. And this is a long letter. It's not exactly written as well as it might have been, in my opinion. But this is a brave person, sends a letter to the FBI on January 10th, 2016, saying, I have personal knowledge and evidence of criminal activities being carried out by a candidate who may very well win the nomination, doesn't say this in the letter, but who may win the nomination to be President of the United States and may ultimately become President of the United States, and I demand that you investigate it. So what does Dopey do? I mean, we don't know if Dopey James Comey actually even read the letter, but we do know the letter asks to be acknowledged. We do know that the letter was acknowledged as having been received, right? And why do we know that? We'll show you.
Before we do that, Charles, I just wanted to ask really quickly, do you think that Nixon honestly believed that statement that if the president does it, it's not illegal?
Yeah, probably.
How the hell could he think that?
Well, I think what people may be thinking when they say stuff like that is I can get all exercised about what the Constitution says. Then the tacticians will say, all right, let's think about this, okay? Now you want to go and prosecute somebody. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's a process for that. Who runs prosecutions? Citizens don't do that. Right. You've got to get somebody, if it's a federal crime, in the Justice Department, working with a U.S. attorney to say, all right, let's convene a grand jury, let's pick a jurisdiction that makes sense, and let's ask ourselves, do we believe, on the basis of the evidence that we found so far and might be able to find through search warrants and other techniques, do we believe that we will be able to amass enough evidence to make a case that will allow us, depending on the criminal standard, whether it's preponderance of evidence or beyond a reasonable doubt, if it's criminal versus civil or whatever, do we believe that will ultimately convince a jury to convict somebody of wrongdoing after we impeach them? Because the remedy for a president, first you got to impeach them.
Right. That essentially is an indictment.
Impeachment is an indictment, and then the trial is a very high bar, 67 senators. So, generally speaking, I'm told, you wouldn't know it from the way they went after Corinne Brown and the way they went after Stockman, our government, in theory, here's a laugh, doesn't like to waste resources. Right. And that's why we run $1 trillion deficit every year. But so they before they go down this path, they take extra steps, and they're very, very careful. But here, Comey doesn't even acknowledge this. So we see here on page 11 of this link here, yeah, page 11 of that one. Yeah, we see this is something interesting. It's written, they take until February 22nd to write it up. But it has to do with a walk-in. This person who sent the letter walks into the DC office with documents and says, hey, how come dopey James Comey didn't respond to my letter, and nobody is answering the phone, and I'm not going to waste my time. I'm just going to walk in. Grab your scruffy ass into a skiff, if you can go into a skiff with me, and I will show you she's committing crimes.
They really were doing everything they could to ignore the guy.
Right. So he comes in on the 27th of January, and what happens? The guy who was Giacalone, who was running he wasn't told about the Comey letter, is my guess. He says, I ain't doing this, Jim. I'm not going to, I have a career at this is my working theory, I have a decades-long career at the FBI. I'm a straight shooter. I'm not in politics. You got this letter on January 10th or 11th or 12th, whenever you got it, and you didn't tell me? And now this guy's coming walking into my office here and saying, how come dopey James Comey didn't tell me about this? I'm out of here. Yeah. And so then dopey James Comey says, all right, well, what we'll do, we'll cover it up. We'll put this guy McCabe in, now to be my deputy on February 1st. And then it takes him 3 weeks to write this report. A lot of times the other reports are written very quickly, like within days.
Is that what happened? McCabe became the deputy? Really?
February 1st.
Wow.
Right? So we're beginning to see when you put a chronology together, the way we've been doing, you begin to see the motive.
The metadata shows you what's up.
What's happening, yeah.
It shows you what happened. That's right.
So
wow. Amazing, Charles.
Now,
really.
in addition to this, and we'll just close with on this page, if we go back into that slide, if we can. This Katika person has done a fantastic, this last one, tweet, I hope it's still up there, that I sent to you.
Yep.
And note to Hillary and to Madeleine Albright, brooches, not a good look. Not a good look. Not at all. Probably that's where the listening devices are.
I was going to say, wouldn't it be very easy to hide something in a thing like that?
Yeah. Yep. But this is a long, if you go below there, you see, know your Clinton corruption.
It could be.
This is a long, long thing, but the summary of it is, and Katika does fantastic work. I don't know who this person is, whether it's a man or a woman or whatever. It is, because you have a picture like that, could be her, maybe it isn't her. But she does really wonderful work. And the point is, and this is, I checked, and emails the ICIG was given by the FBI that later showed the metadata anomalies to send to a foreign power were from the thumb drive Attorney Kendall gave them August 6, 2015.
Wow.
There were 60,000 emails before deletions. And she goes into all this. This is an expert on all this kind of stuff. People who are also experts need to read this very carefully. But in sum and substance, what she's saying is that this genius who was going to run the world, in her own image, God forbid, had managed with this private server system to allow at least the Chinese to gain access to all but 4 emails of the many that went out of the server. Okay?
All but 4.
And so that when you go back into this and you say, all right, what really happened? Okay? An arrangement was made, an accommodation was made around June 5th, 2008 between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama to give Hillary Clinton's team the right to monetize her connections, pre-existing connections, and the one she would then have as Secretary of State for the mutual benefit of herself, maybe for the team Obama, the Democratic Party. And they decided they'd do all that in a manner where no one would be allowed to actually get in and see all the crooked deals that were being concocted. I say, and my hunches sometimes are bad, but my hunch on this one, I think, is Barack Obama and Valerie Jarrett and their people were very much on the inside and aware of this, even likely before especially likely before the election in 2008.
Well, he had to be. I mean, obviously, he's the president. The buck stops there. And as far as him benefiting, you know, he's the House. The House gets a taste.
Right. Right. Well, he just recently gave that idiotic speech where he said, you know, I don't know how I came up with all this money.
I mean, that's so stupid.
That's like, really? That's a very, I mean, at least the former mayor of Mexico City was making like $5 a year, you know, when questioned, you know, how he had a mansion worth $50 million. He said, well, I'm very good at investing my money. Yeah, right.
The $5 goes a long way.
I'm in cattle futures too, just like Hillary. I've got that cattle futures program.
You know, Larry Nichols just said yesterday that it's China is the real collusion.
Well, I actually think it's like one of my favorite mysteries, Death on the Nile. This would be Death on the Potomac. You know, everybody's guilty. They're all, you know, I think the Brits are in here. I think, you know, multiple. When these sharp people, the boffins, you know, these computer specialists, and I'm talking about the people who really are really way out there, they must have the ability to figure out, you know, which things should I try to hack, where are there anomalies. They knew almost instantly, I would suspect, that Hillary Clinton was using this porous, to put it mildly, secret server system and these absurd devices. I mean, can you imagine? Here's the Secretary of the State saying to everybody else, be very careful when you travel internationally about using email. And then saying to some, you know, junior, you know, assistant, deputy, muckety-muck, look, you know, this new technology stuff, I can't use it.
I need more convenience.
Yeah,
let's store it all in the bathroom.
You know, even better. It's like my BlackBerry broke again, you know, but I don't like these new BlackBerries. Can you get me a used one off eBay? And you know, this is somebody who somehow made the list of the smartest lawyers in the world. Umpty up years, right? This is an idiot.
Charles, doesn't that very excuse just reek of bullshit? Like, how could she possibly, if you're Hillary Clinton, can't you just call BlackBerry and be like, give me another one?
No, remember the whole thing when they first got the...
I mean, it just sounds like a lie. You're the Secretary of State, you're buying...
A Canadian product, by the way.
Canadian product, but you're buying it off of eBay?
I know. She probably didn't buy it. It's Clinton Foundation maybe buying it. She doesn't buy anything.
There's just so many things wrong with that.
Yeah, and it's just. I mean, it speaks to your risk profile, right? You're risk prone to do this kind of stuff, and do you really want somebody that risk prone to be organizing a reset with a country that has, you know, a lot of weapons that if you piss them off could kind of hurt a few people?
Or you should buy them on eBay. Nukes.
Anyway, so this tweet is another. Today, it's short today in terms of the slides that I've put together because there's so much good stuff for the crowd to get involved circulating, and I really hope people will read this stuff carefully and follow Katika. She's great.
Yep.
So if we go back into the next page, and there's only one page left, I wanted to give people an update, and I use this RICO case. It's, you know, there is actually one RICO case out there already. It's civilian.
Byrne?
Yeah.
Gary Byrne, the former Secret Service agent.
Is he the one who brought one against
who we had a conversation with?
So I want to remind people of one thing. We need this. We'll take a little bit of time on this. This is the so-called determination letter that you get back from the IRS when you complete your paperwork. And if we put this up on the page, we notice. Is this the right? Yeah. This is the wrong one.
Is it?
Yeah, it's my fault. We're going to have to go. Can we go into Google?
Yep.
Sorry, I do make mistakes from time to time. So we just go into Google, and then we put Clinton Foundation and annual. Not report, just annual. And see what pops up. And hit that, and then go down the page a little bit, and a little bit more, tax exempt. Hit that, please. Yeah. Okay, this is the one that came on January 29th, 1998. Now, let's spend a little time on this. Note that it was sent not to William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, it was sent to the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, okay? And then note that it says your foundation status classification is 509A1. See that?
Yep.
Now we go into this first paragraph. And I want to emphasize, based on information you supplied, both in the application and then if they had follow-up question, and assuming your operations will be as stated in your application for recognition of exemption, we have determined you are exempt from federal income tax under section 501A, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Important caveats. Based on information you supplied, and assuming your operations prospectively in the future will be as stated in your application, you're exempt. It doesn't say you could do whatever you want, right? And then it says, we have determined that you can reasonably expect to be a publicly supported organization described in sections 509A1 and 170B1A, Roman numeral 6. Now, this is like if your parents go to you and say, Jason, I'm going to give you money for $100,000 because I'm feeling generous. You can go buy a car, right? And very few people would do that, but I mean, to anybody.
You have a party and buy a lot of booze and everything.
Well, most people. This letter is saying, here's $100,000 for a Saab or a safe, whatever kind of, what's that car? Subaru.
Volvo.
Yeah, Volvo or some minivan or whatever. This is a specific, very specific type of charity. This is not saying that you can fight HIV/AIDS around the world, that you can set up a confab in New York where you get idiots to come and say, I'll give away $1 billion, assuming I get $100 billion by doing this. I mean, this is a specific type, a very specific type of charity. And you're going to ask me, what type of charity might that be? And that's why we're going to go back into the slides.
It's funny, this never happens, but getting the playback is blacking out.
Weird.
Still good.
So this is a memo here that explains what a 509A type is. If you hit this, if you can hit this one here. And a lot of these memos, you notice this is written in 1993. Okay, a lot of these.
1993.
See up on the right there? And you'll say, well, people will say, why? This is old, it doesn't matter, it's not modern, it hasn't been brought up. No, this is, as they like to say about climate change and other things, this is settled science. I mean, this has been long settled for a long, long time. The original law, the last time it was amended was 1969. It's remained in place. If you go to the next page, we see here's Type B publicly supported organizations, IRC 509A1 and that same 170B1A6. Organizations receiving substantial support from a government unit or from the general public. Okay? So this is a publicly supported entity receiving substantial support from a governmental unit, one or more governmental unit, meaning, the city of Little Rock, the state of Arkansas, you name it, the Center for Disease Control, or foreign governments.
IRS, would that count? They're not supporting
Well, you could argue they're supporting. No, this is grants. These are, with your where's your revenue coming? Right. Yes, the IRS is giving you support. You don't have to pay income taxes,
right, and
corporate income taxes on the entity, and your donors get a tax benefit for giving you money. So yeah, you're getting. But this is talking about, your entity is primarily supposed to be supported either by the general public, and that doesn't mean by George Soros. That means by thousands of small donations or tens of, and or from a government. Okay, that's what this has to be. Okay, it's a special subspecies of 501c3 charity. It's a special. That's what it had to be at all times. Now you're a trustee of this entity. You're not a director. The way this legally was set up, the people running this were trustees. They owed a duty of care, loyalty, and obedience to the entity. So in other words, David H. Pryor, whose son was the Attorney General of Arkansas when this was going on.
No Pryors. No Pryors.
no Pryors. Well, he's going to have some now.
Yeah.
And Vernon Jordan's wife, Ann Jordan, who was a partisan Democrat, and James Rutherford, who was a close associate of David H. Pryor. Those are the three trustees. So they owed, in this time frame when they were setting this thing up, a duty of care, that is to spend the time and energy necessary to make sure they understood the laws and the rules. They owed a duty of obedience to all law, federal, state, foreign law, and a duty of loyalty primarily to the organization, meaning that if there's a conflict between the interests of David H. Pryor trying to scare up money to pay off Williams and Connolly's legal bill for the various problems that the Clintons were having with impeachment, if there's a conflict, he's got to put his hand up and say, wait a minute, I'm raising money for their personal expenses in an illegal vehicle, characterizing that one as being a charity when it certainly isn't a charity. I'm also a trustee of this thing. I can't do that because that's
but they
like
love to do that. Well, commingle the funds like that.
Yeah. So this is what it was supposed to be. All right. And we go back into. I'm showing you now. This is hard evidence that you saw. We took it right from the Clinton Foundation website. That's a repetition of what it's supposed to be. But most importantly, you see what it says here? It has to be an organization. It can't. To be an organization, you have to be a corporation, a trust, or an association. In each case, you've got to file paperwork. It's got to be accurate. You've got to have meetings. You've got to have minutes. You've got to, make sure that everything you do complies with the law, and you've got to be careful and organized. This is just like, Clapper. This is a group of people who are very valuable. Everything that they do is wrong. So you look at their behavior and you say, what they're doing is wrong, right?
Do the opposite.
Do the opposite. So here we have in here this very important, another belt and suspenders, bedrock document, this one written in 1985, explaining the organizational test. So the simple question is, I was meeting with two lawyers today at lunch, and thank you both for your ideas this morning, this early afternoon. We'll keep their names out of it. The gating question, looking at this mess, is was the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation actually an organization at any time in its legal existence?
They just made it up.
Well, you can't just because you type a document up, and even if you file it with the Secretary of State in Arkansas, that doesn't mean you've done anything yet. You have to actually make sure that as far as the articles of incorporation of a not-for-profit corporation in Arkansas, you got to make sure that those articles meet the statutory requirements of the state, of the IRS and elsewhere, and then you've got to have bylaws, which you've got to, the trustees got to get together, hold a meeting, formally come up with bylaws, make sure that what they're doing fits the purposes of the organization, and then they've got to comply with all the relevant laws. If the state of Arkansas says, when you form an Arkansas nonprofit corporation, even if it's a partial year, you've got to file a tax return for that partial year. You better file that tax return.
How are they opening bank accounts for all these fake things? I mean, doesn't the bank check anything?
Well, apparently in Arkansas, not so much. It's like, it's a banana republic down there. And this has got to stop because, when you have a state that is it's been operated by Republicans now for a while. When you have a state that decides within our great, country of 50 states that it's going to allow fraudsters to go into that state and create this thing that they have created, that cheapens every state in the union. This is literally a federal case here. And this thing, the facts and evidence that are out there, prove beyond doubt there was no organization. There never has been an organization. This is what's called a formless aggregation, and it's strictly forbidden for a charity to be a formless organization.
It's also prima facie evidence of that.
Exactly. So here you have a link to this thing. You can read this to your heart's content. We go back into I lifted this from that document. It should be remembered that a deficiency in the articles cannot be cured by the organization's actual operations. In other words, if you organize something wrongly on October 23rd, 1997, and what you have described as a charity is not a charity, the fact that the articles are wrong, but you say you whip yourself into a frenzy and say, I know, my articles are wrong, but ever since then I've sold everything I own, I've given it all to charity, I've cured cancer, I've done this, I've done that. Rubbish. Doesn't matter. The articles have to be correct, and they aren't. Okay, that's crystal clear. Even Rod Rosenstein, who supposedly got all these credentials from Harvard Law School, summa cum laude from Wharton, he should certainly have seen this during the 4-year period from 2001 to 2005, when he was at Maine Justice deciding which tax frauds to prosecute. But he didn't. And Comey should have seen this when, from December 2001 and afterwards, He was leading the investigation into this fraud, and of course he found nothing, because that's his job. If it involves the Clintons or the Bushes or whatever, I will find nothing.
Well, I mean, I think we're starting to see that these are exactly the guys who are put right in place to prevent anyone from seeing anything that would allow an investigation to actually go forward.
Which brings us to Mueller, who was involved in this same thing, overseeing the FBI from September 4th, 2001. So it says the articles, a problem with the articles isn't fixed by the operations. In addition, an organization whose activities are not within the scope of the statute cannot be exempt. All right? By virtue of a conforming charter. In other words, you can't write a charter that says, I will in fact be an organization that looks like a charity, and then by your activities go out there and say, actually what I'm going to do is have a catering service and pool, nonstop pool party on the rooftop of my penthouse and massage parlor overlooking that river in Arkansas. You can't do that.
Mini golf course.
You
can't build that.
No. So then we get to this question. I get, now quite a bit of traffic, and I appreciate getting the email traffic and the Twitter traffic and all that. With people saying, all right, Charles, we hear you talking and this and that, but there's a statute of limitations. They're running at the clock.
Not for RICO, there's not.
Not for RICO, and not for failing to file a tax return, which they failed to file a federal tax return for the period October 23, 1997 to December 31st, 1997. And it's highly material. I think this is the wrong page.
Is it?
Yeah. Next page. There you go. So there's no return filed. I'll show you this. If we can get into that page. All right, and if we go down the page a little bit, we see here the annual reports of the marketing brochures. Those are just rubbish. These are the ones that they had to file. Do you see an entry there for 1997?
No, it only goes back to 1998.
Right. So in 1998, let's hit that baby. And it says up here, this is your initial return, okay? So this is the first return they filed. Now, the rules, we won't bore you with this, but I can tell you there's David K. Johnston, this guy who thinks he's such a genius about tax returns.
Yep.
He's the one who got Trump's tax return. They file it as an initial return. Do you see the word "the" before William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation?
No.
Okay, so they use the wrong name. They use the wrong address. They call it an initial return when it's not.
Well,
okay?
but where is that 1997 return?
They've
just
never
deleted it?
They never filed it. And if we go down the page a little bit here, you see here this government contributions grants? Do you see any money attached to that?
No.
Okay, so they don't put anything in there. We keep them going a little bit. Then we keep going to the next page after this. After that. All right, please stop if you will. And if we go to the top of the page here.
Sorry, I lost the cursor.
That's all right. Okay, cash non-interest bearing, okay? None at the beginning of the year, and it's all non-interest bearing cash at the end of the year. See that?
Yes.
None at the beginning, so all of their money is non-interest bearing cash, okay? So we're going to do on Sunday, we're going to take you through why this is rubbish. There's a real problem in here. We're not, it would take too much time to go through all of the stuff.
Third show called "Why This Is Rubbish." I have a different document each day.
All right. We keep going, but you see, they claim no activities of any kind in 1997. And then back, if we go to the next, there's this schedule after this one. Okay, next page.
What is this here?
That's the president signing the return on April 13th, 1999.
What's his name?
Skip Rutherford.
Seems to be skipping.
Now, here's Williams and Connolly, okay? Now, Williams and Connolly supposedly had a gigantic receivable. That is to say, they had been doing work defending the Clintons ever since 1993, when they first got there, without being paid. Now, I have checked with different law firms, and generally speaking, lawyers don't like to run receivables. It's like, especially when they get into the size so big that first a bunch of foreigners, Charlie Tree and others are going around the world illegally raising money to pay Bill and Hillary Clinton's legal fees.
Right.
And that Presidential Legal Expense Trust blows up the first one by 2007. And a second one gets created towards the end of 1997. And they look around the world and they say, you know what? We want to make sure we screw this up. We would not want to contaminate a charity like the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation by selecting the chairman of the second trust to be David H. Pryor, one of the trustees of the William J. Clinton Presidential Fund. So that's what they did.
Right.
They take this guy, another idiot, I'm sad to say, because I mean, this guy, we have evidence of it. It's in many places now, and you're not going to erase it. We have evidence that David H. Pryor's people filed a return like this for 1998 for something that is not a charity in the state of Maryland. So that the Presidential Legal Expense Trust was housed in Washington, D.C. They sent a filing across state lines into Maryland where it was received, claiming that the Presidential Legal Expense Trust formed to pay off personal legal bills of the Clintons was a charity. Okay, while Bill Clinton was under attack and assault, you know, he was impeached on December 19th, 1998.
Right.
There was the pivotal election coming up. While this is going on, this idiot Pryor thought it would be a good idea to file a tax return, or have his people file a tax return for an entity that obviously was not a charity in Maryland, and we have proof that it went there and to other states.
Is it even legal to set up a charity to help defend a rapist?
Well, that wasn't it's not so much that, the question of the rape, but that is not a good thing. It's not, particularly if you're a sitting president of the United States, but in general, it is not a charitable activity
Paying lawyers.
to pay off, to raise money to pay off your personal expenses defending yourself from alleged crimes.
Right.
That's not a charity. That's very clearly not a charity. And so the notion that somebody, David H. Pryor, who had been, I believe, both a senator and a governor of Arkansas, would say, you know what, this is obviously a charity. We're helping out the Clintons. And besides, no one's going to get to this. My son is the Attorney General of Arkansas.
Yeah, that's how they run it. That's
Yeah.
how they run it down there in Arkansas. You're touching on a lot of points that Larry Nichols brought up yesterday. Right. This guy Tree.
Right. So in this case, the program, when the IRS destroyed, or Corinne Brown destroyed herself, but when the IRS makes its case, the Department of Justice makes their case about whether this was a charity or whether it wasn't a charity, one of the first things they ask is, say, okay, what did the charity say? How much money did the charity say they were going to spend on the most important piece of a charity's income statement, its program services expenses, right? We go back to the very first page of this document. We will see this, keep going all the way back. That's the fourth page. Yeah, all right. Here are the lines of income. And while we're on this page, you see this? How do you earn dividends and interest from securities of $33,000? Okay, when you have no such item in your balance sheet at year end or in the beginning, and where you have this item here, 8, gross amount from sale of assets other than inventory securities, there's nothing shown here. So the argument that you made this money from securities that you sold, you can't make because you haven't sold any securities. How did they come up with this $33,429? And that's not a trivial amount of money relative to the amount of program service expenses, which are shown here in line 13. How much do you see there, Jason, in program service expenses?
$3 million.
No, that's the revenue. 13, line 13. Underneath that.
Nothing.
Right. So the way the IRS normally works, now remember, Bill Clinton's the President of the United States at this point. His people are in the IRS, and Lois Lerner goes right into the IRS in July of 2010 to make sure that this doesn't get, in my judgment, uncovered.
Right.
Normally what the IRS will do when they go into the facts and circumstances of a case, and they say, all right, to determine what was really happening here, what did these good people, Skip Rutherford, Ann Jordan, David H. Pryor, what did they actually do to further the purposes of the charity in 1998? Nothing.
Yeah, don't ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, nothing, right? So, I mean, this, from the very beginning, you look at this is obvious. Now, let's see, did they get an accounting firm in here to study any of this? We can go down.
Let me guess.
Yeah, we can look at this next page here.
Notorious BKD.
You see, accounting fees.
Oh, nothing.
Nothing. And you can't use an accountant. You can't get an audit without paying for it. right? And we have accountants who are working on this now, working with us on it. This is a case study. You know, these Clintons and the Obamas and the Bushes, frankly, you know, they're all in the same place.
Yeah.
They can't seem to do anything right, and that's why the dark money behind them is so happy to let them be presidents of the United States. You get these people in who just, you know, are not equipped to do the job, then the dark money controls them.
Well, but they're willing to play ball. And when you talk about Herbert Walker Bush, I feel like he set up the prototype, because that's the first, I mean, obviously I know we had presidents in our history, but in modern history, that's really the first dynastic presidency.
No, second.
Who was the first?
John Adams and John Quincy Adams.
That was the previous century, wasn't it?
These are my people.
Okay.
not Adams, but...
But how long ago was that, 18 something?
Yeah, early 80s.
This is the New Deal that these guys are doing. And they didn't have multi-million-dollar foundations. You didn't have, you know, television networks across the country.
Right.
You didn't have individuals who could own communications properties that could sway public opinion in the way they do now. I guess newspapers, but I'm saying this is really the CIA. When George H.W. Bush hatched that plan to have his possibly, well, let me not offend any viewers, but extremely stupid son become the president, I think that they were starting this dynasty that now has been perfected in the Clintons with the husband to wife transition, because that can happen much more quickly than with a son. And now I think we're in danger of a Michelle Obama presidency that could do the same exact thing. And I think she's a viable candidate, not because of anything that I know or don't know, because I don't know that much about her qualifications for the job, but just in terms of identity politics. If you want someone who's the opposite of Donald Trump, there's no other candidate that fits that bill better than Michelle Obama.
Which is why this battle that's raging now is so important.
Right.
It's so important. So if we go back into the slides for a second. All right, so we have nothing filed in 97. Then we have, if we hit this thing,
false and materially misleading.
Now let's look at line 1C. Do you see anything there for government contributions, grants?
That's no.
That would be a no.
Blank.
Right. Another no. So, I mean, in this thing, if we go into Schedule A, page 2.
Where is Schedule A?
Keep going down like 5, 6 pages, 7 pages maybe. Keep going. Let's see.
There's
Keep going.
Schedule A.
Let's get page 2. I'm sorry. You keep going. All right, here. This shows the gifts, grants, and contributions received going back 2000 all the way to 1998. In 2002, in 98, with the return for 98, 99, and 2000, in all those years they say they had no revenue in 1997. In all those years they say that they were using the cash basis of accounting, when in fact they were using something called the modified cash basis of accounting, and it's a significant difference. They should have been using the accrual basis. So
Right.
the accrual basis, as we've talked about this before, in 1997, so you're telling me with a straight face, you're the President of the United States, you're in hock up to your ass and beyond to Williamson Connolly, who's yelling and screaming, saying, you know, look, dude, you're about to be impeached. And you know who the only people who are going to get you off the hook of being impeached are us. Okay, but we need to be paid. So
and not in stolen furniture.
Right, exactly. So you're going to set up this presidential legal expense trust. You're going to set up a foundation, and you're going to get our receivable down, because we can't be in hock to you for $10, $12 million. And if you want your book deal where you can make a bunch of money, you're going to get this done right here. So I would argue, not being a lawyer, no interest in being ever trying to be a lawyer at this point, Williamson Connolly, I think, figures in the center of this conspiracy. They certainly have lawyers at Williamson Connolly who are smart enough to know that you don't go and set up multiple fake organizations, holding them all out to be validly organized and operated 501c3 charities when they're not, for the purpose of trying to pay down your bill and think that it's all going to work because a Democrat will follow Bill Clinton and Hillary eventually will be President of the United States, and Williamson Connolly will, be the law firm of choice. This is just so far outside being what a law firm should actually be. Nobody with who has any interest in operating outside getting in trouble should go anywhere near this law firm.
Well-
This is a law firm whose record is worse than deplorable when it comes to the Clinton Foundation and this Presidential Legal Expense Trust. It is outrageous behavior. And who's the person in the center of this? David Kendall. He's the guy who also was advising the Clintons on the private server. He's the one who had the thumb drive of all the emails, who turns it over to, I don't know if he's in there.
Here he is.
Yeah, there's David Kendall, and we look at him. He's yet another rogue scholar.
So is this just a deep state law firm, Charles? They were endorsed by the Washington Post.
I
And
guess.
when I was looking at practices, I expected it to say formation of fake foundations,
Right.
material misleading.
I mean, this is a
documentation.
big firm, right? And so,
Oh, yeah.
and Kendall's a very powerful, aggressive guy, but I mean, no, this is a situation that cries out for being reviewed thoroughly, and the senior partners at Williams and Connolly need to put Mr. Kendall in a figurative box. They need to ring fence him, and anyone working on this matter, and say, listen, we're not going down as a firm. We need to figure out what you really were doing here, okay? And we're not. You did this. You went rogue. I mean,
Well, that was my next question.
Yeah.
Is it maybe not the whole law firm,
Yeah.
but just some guy in there who thought this was a way to get in with the president?
right. And the issue here with Kendall, I mean, Kendall, I think he might have been out of Oxford by the time Bill was there, but he was ahead of Bill as a Rhodes Scholar. I think he went to Yale Law School as well.
Is he a bonesman?
No, that's only for undergraduates.
Oh.
But anyway, so this, we go back into the slides here. In addition to what I've just told you, the largest donor in 1998 to the Clinton Foundation for $2.3 million was the Presidential Inaugural Committee of 1997. Now,
What?
the problem with that is,
I thought they can only pay for the inauguration.
right, and they had money, supposedly had money left over, but the problem with that is the thing is officially disbanded in April of 1997. So if you've disbanded this thing in April of 1997, how did you put $2.3 million into the Clinton Foundation in 1998? And who had custody and control of what was left over from the Presidential Inaugural Committee paperwork? They had to file a report. I asked for it. I got a bullshit response out of the Federal Election Commission at the time when there still were Obama holdovers in it, and Clinton holdovers and Bush holdovers or whatever. The President of the United States and his top people need to find that report on the 1997 Presidential Inaugural Committee that was due to be filed somewhere. On April 11th, there is a story that says it was filed. Who was in charge of the Presidential Inaugural Committee in 1997? It wasn't the man who was in charge of the 1993 Presidential Inaugural Committee. And why would that have been?
If he was dead?
Exactly, that would be Ron Brown.
Oh.
And so the person,
I was joking.
never joke
Wow.
here. And
So
then
the Commerce Secretary.
he was the one, he's dead in
And-
April of 1996, and April 3rd, I believe it was. And so who do they put in? I mean, let's.
I don't know who replaced
Well, do you
Ron
think
Brown.
somebody who thinks he's going to be the next president of the United States, Terry McAuliffe was one of the co-chairmen? That would be one of them. And the other co-chairman was Ann Jordan, the third trustee of the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. So this thing puts $2.3 million in theory into the Clinton Foundation during 1998 out of $3,050,000.
Wow.
Okay, so the question is that a substantial donation?
I'll say.
It's 75.4% of the only 3 donations that are declared in 1998. And they don't disclose any of these relationships in the 990, and the report for the Presidential Inaugural Committee is missing. And Rod Rosenstein, if you'll recall, he says in his resume he was working with Ken Starr. With Ken Starr in 1990, that he didn't do any work, but in fact he interviewed Hillary Clinton in January of 1998. That's not on his resume properly. We're talking about 1998. He demonstrates in January of 1998 by not catching Hillary for the crimes that she was committing with the travel office or whatever it was he was looking at, that he's made his bones. He and his wife will take care of the Clintons, along Comey will take care of the Clintons. So of course he gets put into the Justice Department to be the person in charge of sniffing out tax frauds, 2001 to 2005, when this thing is being investigated. And then they make him, they say, oh, well, under Trump, let's make him Deputy Attorney General, because we can't let this out.
Right. I think there's so many people involved, Charles, that it's got to be that there's a certain type of person who just says, oh, well, this is the way business is done in Washington, so I'm going to get down in the slime. And there's a certain type of person who says, I'm not doing that, and they leave and go to some other career.
Like
Hollywood.
crowdsource the truth, exactly,
Right.
or investing. So this is an interesting thing here. Let me see. Yeah, that one. We're almost
Charlie
done.
Tree. This is exactly what we were
Right.
talking about yesterday with Larry Nichols.
This exact piece of paper?
Well, Charlie Tree.
Oh, he was the one who was giving money to the first Presidential Legal Expense Trust, a 51-page memo on this.
Chinese guy, right?
Yeah, and you'll see that there's a long trail of shame in this.
Is this a real name? It doesn't seem Chinese.
Probably not. It's not. A lot of times they have different names and adopt a Western name. But anyway, we're not going to go through more than even 1 or 2 pages here, but read this at your leisure, investigators, and you'll see that this was clearly a long-standing pattern and practice of harvesting international donors who wanted access to the largest economy in the world and the most powerful country in the world, and regarded that our system of bribery is just not calibrated properly. It's like in Indonesia, if I wanted to get this thing done, I'd have to give you 10 million. How come you only want 100,000? What's wrong with you guys? I mean,
Isn't this guy Johnny Wang was a big part of the...
And James Riotti, these are, and you'll see, the names you're going to see in here? You're going to see Kendall's name in here, you're going to see Cheryl Mills' name in here, you're going to see Maggie Williams, you're going to see, all these people around the Clintons, and this gives you, this is the first trust. And you're not allowed to raise money from foreign people for domestic political activities. You're not allowed, straight up not allowed to do it.
Right.
So that's the whole architecture of the Clinton Foundation is, I see a loophole. I'll get my vice president, the amiable dunce Al Gore, to run for office. We'll try to rig that election. With
the hanging chads.
With the hanging chads and all that. And unfortunately, thankfully, amiable dunce and Nobel Peace Prize winner Al Gore did not become president, but then even more unfortunately, George W. Bush did, only to be followed by more pain from Barack Obama.
It's just getting worse and worse.
Right.
Donald Trump is really... Why don't we, when we're done with all the information, we'll end on a slightly positive note about what's happening with President Trump.
Right, exactly, yeah. He's winning, more winning.
He's getting tired of winning.
Yeah, I'm not.
No.
So if we go back into the... we're almost done here, actually. So there's... If we, hit that one, please. This is the 2007. We go further into the 990. It's like 20 pages in. Just the first page of this 990. This is the 990 for 2007. Okay, which is filed after Barack Obama is elected. Okay, so he's then due to be sworn in as president. Once again, they change the name of the thing. They don't do it properly, but they change it. And you'll see here, no government contributions in 2007.
Remind us all, what's the significance of that?
Well, remember I showed you in the determination letter that you're a 509A1 and 170 blah, 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 that gets all your money from the general public and governments.
But this is not doing it from the
Well,
government.
in no year from 1998, 10 years of filings, 1998 to 2007, in every single year, 1D is blank.
But why is that not okay if they're getting it from the general public?
No, no, it's not okay because they took money from governments and didn't disclose it.
Oh.
Okay, and the reason that's not okay is that you can't, as an elected official, President of the United States Bill Clinton till 2001, January 20th, Senator Hillary Clinton starting January 3rd or something like that, 2001 forward, elected officials of the United States of America are not allowed to be in the employ of foreign governments.
Right, that makes sense.
So, yet this presidential foundation was set up to take money from governments and from the general public. So they don't disclose any part of that right. And this is a violation of too many laws to count, but also state laws. New York State and California laws are very specific, and you have to, every year, they were supposed to list out exactly which government entities, whether it's the US, state, federal, foreign, whatever, all the identities, the purposes, why did I get this money? We know in 2004 that the government of Saudi Arabia gave $10 million, June 29th, I believe it was, 2004, to the Clinton Foundation. In no year, 98, 2007, that's 10 years, none of those years is there any government. And Rod the Genius Rosenstein, looking at this, 2001 to 5 with dopey James Comey and sad sack, Robert Mueller, and they spend 4 damn years on this. That's as
Took
much.
you 5 minutes to find it.
It's like, what the heck? So we got our team to go frame Donald Trump. Get that team together.
That's another important thing to remind everybody about. This is a crew. They're just working on projects.
Right. Yeah. So if we go back in, we're almost done. Amazingly, this happened, and this is it's not fake news. The CNN thing, for effect, we put it up here. This actually happened. This fellow Brian Kemp, Brian Kemp, I think, is the Secretary of State. There you go. Of Georgia, and he won a runoff. He was not the leading contender. The lieutenant governor was the leading contender. Recently, Donald Trump said, actually, I like Kemp. So Kemp crushes the other guy who had been ahead, crushes him like 70-30 or something like that. Wow. What the right vote is. But this gentleman is running against a far left loon Democrat, and the turnout was not good. We look at the people who came out for this thing on the Republican side, there was massive turnout for this runoff election, special election. We go back in for a second to the slide, please. Sunday, we're going to start working on this. But in the meantime, here's an area, Crowdsource the Truth is a community, and thanks for making it a growing community. I know, Jason, you tell me the subscribers are growing by leaps and bounds. That's great. We need your help. America needs your help. We need to make sure that the candidates for governor of Georgia and of every state in the union that should regulate charities are called on the carpet to ask why they aren't prosecuting the Clinton Foundation for fraud. Because the Clinton Foundation can be prosecuted in any state of the union where it's engaged in deceptive practices, where it's still soliciting, any state of the union. So if the crowdsourced community gets into this, and there's going to be a lot of candidates we can contact. I'll try to work up a simple way in the slide so we have the Twitter contact, and we get this going. Why aren't you prosecuting the Clinton Foundation for charity fraud?
Right.
Why aren't you doing something about it? You're trying to raise our property taxes in Georgia. You're trying to raise the income taxes. You're trying to raise, but yet you're letting these fraudsters operate in the state of Georgia.
Right.
Why are you doing this? What's your position on this? And you can ask both candidates. You can ask the Republican, are you for fraud? And then you ask the Democrat, I shouldn't have to ask you because you probably are for fraud.
Yes.
But you get into it a little bit, and it'll catch some momentum. And people in the crowdsourced community, you can really make a difference here. Those of you who have followers, you start doing this. I don't know if we can have a hashtag that makes sense for this or not.
We'll think about that for Sunday.
But this is something that we can do. It's constructive. It'll help. We need to get the Clinton Foundation source of money cut off. And on that subject, briefly, as we're right around our 2-hour deadline here, a little bit over, I can report that we are making progress. And thank you. Those of you who are helping, I'm not going to call you out by name yet because I haven't cleared it with you. But I could tell you that, and I'm not going to tell you in which state, but somebody has come up with a very clever approach towards getting the state authorities in a given state to look into this. We're going to test it, and then we're also going to do, and then we're going to take that show on the road. If it works in that state, it'll work in other states. And then we found a way, some accountants have come to me who understand how this works, and we are going to go try to get proceedings instituted against these different accounting firms. And we're going to
That's a very good idea.
Make sure that they know, all of them that have currently, been involved, and there are many of them. It's not just BKD and Price Waterhouse and Cohen Resnick and Mitchell and Titus. There's many of these accounting firms that have basically enabled this fraud, probably all looking at this saying, she's going to be president of the United States. This will be beautiful.
Everybody's doing it.
It's beautiful.
What about the Bar Association and Williams and Connolly?
We'll try to do that, I think, and not just in D.C.
I like the idea that I'm going to tell you that I can't tell you.
Exactly.
And
But-
the other thing is, I don't want to slow you down because I know you like to move through it, but you say stuff, I'm constantly thinking of jokes like the 2.3 million from the Bill Clinton inauguration party. You saying, you know what the problem was? And I was thinking they were all singles. Stick them in people's underwear.
No, the problem is we don't really know how much money they actually raised for that thing. And you can't, you see that, when the IRS talks about, entities, they're talking about formal organizations. It's not like you can't, the Clinton Foundation approach is, paperwork, I don't do that. IR Magazine was notorious for not being able to do that. And then we just say we hired another Rhodes Scholar. The guy's, he's a Rhodes Scholar.
Gotta be good.
It's gotta be good, right? And so, but there's no organization. He has multiple charities and businesses using the same address, in the same office, in the same telephone, the same fax machine. You can't do that. If you have a charity, especially a publicly supported government and publicly supported charity, you can't mingle that with a consulting firm that's concocting deals around the world. You can't do that.
It's just a fraud enterprise. It's really staggering.
Yeah.
Charles, it's exciting to be on this journey with you and see how you are, as I said at the beginning of the show, or did I say it before we started, you lay it out for people in a way that if you're interested in learning about it, you're not getting this information anywhere else or in this depth, and it's important. I think that people are absolutely reaching a point where we're frustrated. So many people ask me, what can we do? And the first step is educating yourself.
Right.
Because when people, you go to dinner with all these Clinton fans or whatever, and they say, oh, you like Trump, or you go to Starbucks or wherever you go. When you start looking at the facts, it's like,
well, it's funny, I had a very interesting thing happen. It's a good, bad thing. Well, I was asked to guest host Utrice Leeds' show, her radio show on Monday, which is an experience. We think of Rush Limbaugh, and I'm not comparing myself to Rush Limbaugh, but Rush Limbaugh's approach is to have no guests, right, in studio. He just talks, and he goes 3 hours a day, 5 days a week without guests. He has on Friday, Caller Friday, whatever he calls it. And so I was asked to do this on very short notice, couldn't get guests together, didn't even want to think about trying to get guests together. And I spoke for about 25 minutes, giving people an update. This is a progressive station, and Utrice is a wonderful human being. So I've been on her show a lot, and the audience knows all about the Clinton Foundation. The audience is, so we get a bunch of callers. The first caller is a progressive who takes a lot of time on the phone to not ask a question but to make comments, and it was interesting. And she said, I ran for city council here in New York many times. I know how corrupt the city is, and I want you to know, Charles. She said, I was using the information I learned to convince my fellow Bernie Sanders supporters that I knew here in New York and elsewhere. She said on air, to make sure that Hillary Clinton, that they didn't vote for Hillary Clinton,
Right.
So it was having an impact in 2016. Again, I got the chance, I've spent far more time on progressive radio stations and now with you than I've spent on Fox or One American News Network, the right-wing stuff. Though I like, those two. And this has become, I think, thanks to your work and our work, it's become a uniting project. This is, these people, the Clintons and now the Obamas and the Bushes, thought they were above the pesky little laws that we have to follow, and they're not. And that's what Trump's going to show us next. If Donald Trump does not lock these people up, going through a normal judicial process, then I will turn on him. You cannot let, this is too serious affront to the foundations of our republic and our history. It is too serious affront to say, traffic ticket, everybody does it.
No, exactly.
You cannot
this is not a partisan political issue. This is, are you on the side of crime or justice?
Right.
And it's that simple. And we almost forgot to mention this. This True Pundit article just was posted moments before we went on. Winning bigly for President Trump right here, going up against the German Hillary, among others, to basically tell the Europeans to accept these lower tariffs, or that's it. That's the only option.
Well, see, again, I'm not saying that business people are perfect, and I'm certainly not saying that Donald Trump is perfect, but when you look at a business problem, a true business, a for-profit business problem, there is a solution. There are multiple different solutions. When you are the largest market in the world, which the United States is by a multiple of any other country in the world, it's far bigger than Japan, far bigger than China, far bigger than Germany, okay? When you're that big and you've got all these consumers who like to buy shit and have cash to pay for it, you know, and some smaller country has been abusing you, you're saying, yeah, we love taking your money, but you're not taking any German money. You're not taking any Chinese money. You're not taking any Japanese money. You know, when we say, okay, that's fine. You can run a $200 billion trade surplus, you know, against us, and then make it impossible for us to sell cars in Germany or China or whatever. You can do that because we're that stupid. And actually, we're that beholden to the swamp. The Germans and the Chinese and the whatever, they figure out how to hire Williams and Connolly or some firm like that to route money through their partners into political campaigns, to their wives or whatever.
Yeah.
They figure out how to pay off
To
the
make
people
it
in the
all
swamp.
happen.
Make it all happen. Donald Trump looks at it and says, guys, I'm not into that kind of swamp. I don't do the Washington, D.C. Potomac swamp, okay? I see the obvious. We have a gigantic market. Our people like to buy cars and trucks. You know, if yours are better than ours, fine. We'll remove all the tariffs. We'll move all the soft, you know, the non-tariff trade barriers. And let's have a real competition.
What's going to happen now for the average person where their coffee machine or their Mercedes
Go down in
cost
cost.
less,
It's
right?
going to go, especially because, you know, when China sticks to this and says, now wait a minute, Donald Trump has just regulated, in, you know, street parlance, has regulated Europe. You know, far bigger, the collection of countries that Trump was negotiating is far bigger, and America together are far bigger than China. And China isn't. I'm going to be on John Batchelor tonight at 10:20 p.m. talking about China and the difficulties it's in. You know, China is in for a world of hurt now if this is true. You know, I hope it's true. And it's not like...
True Pundit would run it if it weren't.
Well, what I'm saying is, the reason I say I hope it's true is the devil is in the details. Sometimes politicians will rush to it, you know, announce a solution.
Mission accomplished.
And then the swamp monsters back in Europe and here in the United States will say, shit, if they get rid of tariffs...
Kibosh on it.
Well, if they get rid of tariffs, then we won't make money advising people how to get around the tariffs. We can't do that. You know, that doesn't work for us. But this, I think, you know, people have to learn that in business, you know, and that's what Donald Trump, you dislike him, like him, whatever, but you got to admit, there are no buildings around New York called the Peter Strzok Tower or the Robert Mueller Tower, right?
No,
There
that's
just
true.
aren't. Or James Comey or Rod Rosenstein. But, you know, Donald Trump, yes, he had family money, but, you know, Donald Trump was from Queens, and he came in, and first he made a huge impact in Manhattan and now around the world, and now look what he's doing. He's somebody who's willing to take on the status quo, and he doesn't do it just to, you know, wake up one day and say, how did I get all this money? You know, and all these mansions.
People also make it sound like it's easy. What I've heard is that he had a $1 million loan from his father, and the concept of turning, I bet you could make a long list of people who had $1 million and turned it into zero, and a much shorter list of people who had $1 million that turned it into $1 billion.
Or 10 or whatever it is, yeah. And you know, so what I think we have is we've entered a very new chapter here where, of course, the corporate-owned media, of course, academia, of course, the swamp, the politicians, the people who feed off the monsters in both parties, all that universe is terrified of Donald Trump because the American people are waking up. You know,
Right.
how many times, I was watching a bit of TV earlier this week and hearing, you know, Richard Haas, the chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations, says Donald Trump is an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, he's upsetting the apple cart. Our European allies they don't know what to do. They're not going to rely on America for their security.
That sounds okay.
That's, you know, wait a minute. Why are we paying for that? You know, I mean, so I think Donald Trump has earned, in my opinion, you know, through all this tireless work, by the way, for free, you know, tackling problems that Bush and Obama, both Bushes, let fester, get worse and worse and worse. He's saying, no, I've been elected. I may have only one term. I may decide to serve only one term. I'm going to solve these damn problems, right? And he's going after them hard. And I think he's winning. I think many Americans are much better off. There are always going to be the complainers, you know, the grousers. But Donald Trump, you give the man credit. He's trying pretty hard. Looks like he's having some successes. Can he be vulgar? Can he be coarse? Yes, he can. does he have a perfect, history in life? No one does, and he certainly doesn't. But is this person, rather special to come out of nowhere? To say, for my first trick, I think what I'll do is I'll take on the Republican establishment, humiliate it, and then win an election that was rigged for somebody, who was going to be a puppet for dark money.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he didn't do that.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's been a fantastic episode, Charles. A lot of solid, super solid information for people to absorb, and I'm feeling very good about things right now. Swamp's drained slower than we might like, but it's moving in the right direction. And I want to thank you for joining me on this Wednesday. I want to thank everybody for watching, and I want people to remember that what we're doing here at Crowdsource the Truth is all part of this, because when the corporate media is controlled by the money from big billionaire advertisers, it's not serving people's best interests. But when we come together, as you've said, Charles, as a community and distribute the sponsorship of a resource like this in small amounts so that nobody is put out financially, but we can still have a financially healthy business to keep this going, that's super important. So I hope that people will choose to go to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and become a patron. Your monthly sponsorship of just $1 per month will give you access to exclusive content. Right now, Quinn Michaels and I have done a bunch of videos that are available only on Patreon. There will be more videos coming soon, and people who just want to make a one-time sponsorship can do that at paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. People have sent checks and things like that. There's someone that I've got to call back. Someone actually wrote out a check to Crowdsource the Truth, and it's important for people to understand. Crowdsource the Truth is a brand name, almost like the title of a movie. It's not a corporation. It's not something that you can pay. The corporation is owned by 21st Century 3D, or I should say the brand is owned by 21st Century 3D, so anybody who's sending a check should make it out to 21st Century 3D, and that's something that one of my detractors is trying to hang me up on. He's trying to say Crowdsource the Truth is a fraudulent corporation. I've never advertised it as or demonstrated it to be a corporation any more than titling a show, You Can't Write a Check to Sunday with Charles, but it's a thing.
damn.
Well, Charles, thank you very much for joining me.
My pleasure.
I will see everybody tomorrow. Thanks for watching.